All right, thanks guys. My name's Dave Zapzodi. I've been a health and fitness professional for about 20 years. Most of that time as a personal trainer, but also as a nutritionist, martial arts teacher. I own my own health and fitness center, and most recently an author. I had a book published in January of this year on healthy living. And what we're going to talk about today are stretches to complement our meditation practice, specifically our seated meditation practice. So when I say complement, what I mean is when we sit for extended periods of time, really when we're in any position for extended periods of time, we're going to put our body in a position where certain muscles are shortened and tightened, and other areas are lengthened or possibly weakened. So what we want to do is when we're in that position, we want to counterbalance by lengthening the tight areas and by strengthening the weak areas or the lengthened areas. We're going to talk today about lengthening the tight areas through flexibility. Exercise would be another subject altogether in terms of weight training or yoga or whatever else you want to do. So when considering first with seated meditation, I want to talk about two areas that are common with any type of seating that we do. The first is that the knee is bent, okay? So if you look, normally we would be like this, bent, very simple, right? When we're sitting in a chair, the knee is bent. When we're sitting in full lotus or half lotus, the knees are bent, quarter lotus, Burmese. In Seiza, the knees are all bent. So what that does is that it is going to shorten the top of the calf and the bottom of the hamstring. The first stretch we're going to do is probably the most common stretch that everyone does is a hamstring stretch. And before we do it, I'm going to talk about a few things about stretching. One of the good things also is that in our culture, most of us are sitting throughout the day. Most of us have jobs where we sit for hours at a time. So the stretches that we're going to do that are going to help with our seated meditation are also going to help with our everyday life, with the common postural or muscular imbalances that we create in the body or we develop through continued sitting. So the first one is going to be, I'm going to have you guys actually do this with me. This is going to be a participatory exercise. So the first one is going to be a hamstring stretch, and we're just going to start. When we do a stretch, really any type of stretch, most of us are focused up here in our everyday life, and this comes out when we're stretching. Most people, when they do a hamstring stretch, they think of like, they grab their feet from up here, and they try to like torque themselves down. That's why a lot of people, when they do these kinds of stretches, if they go too deep, they end up hurting their low back. So what we want to do, two principles to remember. Number one is on the inhalation, we're going to align, and on the exhalation, we're going to go deeper. A lot of people say you keep your back straight. You're not going to be able to keep your back straight while you're doing the stretch, but you're going to keep yourself aligned during the inhale as much as you can, and then you're going to move from your center on the exhalation. So you're going to deepen from the center. So it looks like this. At first, I'll probably be up here. Inhale, align, and then exhale, coming from this area, not from there, but from up here, I'll come down. And then I'll inhale again, lengthen, and then exhale a little further. Inhale, lengthen. As you get further and further, you're going to do it less, and you're going to have less and less, more and more subtle movements. But this will ensure that you'll be stretching in a way that's beneficial, that's not going to hurt some part of your other body. A lot of people like to time stretches. They like to do something like 20 seconds or something along those lines. I'm not a big fan of timing, specifically with a stopwatch or something like that, because I feel like it gets you into a more passive stretch. I'd rather it was engaged, so I'd rather everyone stretch for like maybe 4 or 5 breaths of that aligning and then deepening. Aligning, inhale, exhale, deepening on both sides. So we'll do the first side. And you guys have all done that a bit. So we'll switch to the other side now. And it's okay to grab your foot as long as you're not coming from up here to grab it. So inhale, align. Exhale, deepen. Inhale, align. You can do like 3 or 4 breaths with each one. Okay, so while you guys are finishing that up, I'm going to talk about the next one. I'm going to talk about really the main, there's a whole bunch of stretches you can do depending on what type of specific seated posture you're in. I'm going to talk about some of the most basic ones that apply to pretty much all of them. So the first one, we already talked about, the knee is bent in all kinds of sitting posture. The only type of meditation you could do with the knee isn't bent is if you're doing a lying or a standing meditation. Even with standing, you're usually slightly bent. The next area that's always common is that the hip is bent, okay? So it's bent here, it's bent in all those other postures, as opposed to being straight. Now, I want to show you guys something. Most people in our culture deal with low back problems, okay? And what's the most common thing we do when our back is hurt? We try to stretch our low back, right? So I'm going to show you why actually getting your hips into balance are more important than stretching your back. When we're sitting all day, just imagine I'm sitting in a chair, so I'm just going to do it from a lateral view so you guys can see. This area is bent, okay? And this area back here is lengthened. This would be shortened back here, and this would be lengthened here. So we're like this all day. Most of us have like 8-hour-a-day jobs where we're sitting. And whatever position your body's in, it gets used to that and it becomes familiar, it becomes comfortable. So your hip flexors are shortened in this position and your glutes are lengthened. And they both like that because they're like that all the time. Then when you go to stand up, your hip flexors are saying, oh wait, hold on, I'm used to being shortened. And the glutes, which would usually, if you contract it to bring it back into balance, they're saying, well, I'm used to being lengthened, so they want to be like that. Now, you're going to look pretty goofy if you're going around your life doing this, right? You're also going to look goofy if you do this. But the body does do that. It just doesn't make you look goofy by bringing your whole body down. So it brings the hips down like that without the rest of the body coming down. It goes like that. Okay? So that's a common postural deviation called an anterior pelvic tilt. And what it means is that your hip flexors are tight and your glutes are lengthened. Now, as you guys can see, when this happens, when I tilt my body in this way, you guys see how it increases the curve on the spine? That's compressive and it ends up causing back pain. So you guys can see now how stretching the low back is fine and it can bring some temporary relief. But if the hip flexors are tight and the pelvis stays in that position, this relief from stretching the back is only going to be temporary because unless we fix the source, it's just going to come back. So this is where we want to be. This is where we end up needing to be. So we need to get our muscles basically out of their comfort zone into the opposite posture that they're normally in. So what we're going to do for this one, and just so you guys know, if I were stranded on a desert island and I could only pick one stretch with me, this is the stretch I would bring, okay? This is a lunge stretch. Same thing as with the hamstring. What we're focusing on doing here is lengthening this area, okay? So most people, when they do this, they're going to try to lean forward because they're focused on the top part of their body. They'll be trying to deepen into it like this. We don't want to do that. We want to inhale, align, exhale, push from the center down this way, okay? Have your feet far enough out that you're not like going onto your toes like this when you go down. Make sure that it's out far enough that your knee is around the center to the heel of your foot, okay? And then just do that a few times. If you can't go much further, don't worry about it, but just inhale. Another thing you can do, you guys don't have to do this now, but to increase the effectiveness of this stretch, it's good to get into different angles with each breath, just so that your body, it increases the proprioception, increases the effectiveness of the stretch itself. So you could do one where you turn this way, you could inhale back to center, exhale that way, you could go up, go to the side, there's a whole bunch of different ways. Basically you want to move around in different angles, find the area that's the most tight, and focus on that more than the other ones. So inhale, align, exhale, deepen from the center. Inhale, align. Okay, good. So now we'll go ahead and switch to the other side. also, as you're doing this, as you're coming from here, you can push with your hands in the opposite direction to really elongate that as much as you can. Okay, so a deepening, another stretch that we can do that's similar to this, that's even deeper, is the same exact stretch, except your foot is going to be up. If you guys can just watch this, but if you want to try it, some of you might feel plenty from just that stretch. If you want to deepen it, you can go to one of the chairs. And what we'll do is we'll put our foot on top of the chair, and then the knee down, and then the same thing. This is going to be a lot more hip flexor than the quadricep muscle. It's going to get some muscles that the other one doesn't, even though it looks very similar. Same thing. If you feel any type of pulling where it's like causing pain, you don't want to do it. Also, you don't want to bang up your knee. If you need some padding underneath, that's totally fine too. Okay, and we'll switch sides. Inhale, align. Oftentimes we try to avoid pain by moving away from the stretch. I guess maybe like we do in our everyday life, but to be really effective with it, you want to move right into the pain and feel it. And that will actually help you to gauge where you are and to not overdo it and injure yourself. Okay, you guys doing good? All right, let's come on back. So next we're going to do a stretch. Most of us, even if we sit in seiza, which is this posture, most of us don't do this exclusively. So we usually sit in one of the half lotus, full lotus, quarter lotus, Burmese, or is that Burmese? Right? Burmese, one of the postures where our knees are out to the side. So basically what that is that's external rotation of the hip. Actually, to get a good lotus posture, you want to have good external rotation at your hip joint. A lot of people think that they need to get more flexible at the knee. The knee has not. If you're feeling your knee during lotus, you shouldn't be doing it at all. This is all about flexibility of the hip and coming out to the side that way. So when we're sitting a lot, I know Randy was saying that when he first started sitting, he had to have something here, and then he got more and more flexible, and it came down. So when this happens, there's a shortening of the muscles on the outside of the hip because the leg is coming out that way. It's shortening and lengthening in here. So we want to do something to counterbalance that in the other direction. So the stretch we're going to do now will not only do that, but it'll also stretch the low back. So it has a double bonus there. So this one is going to be leg is straight out to the side, and then the knee is up. You can have it further away or closer as you're able to. Your elbow is going to be on the opposite side. Okay? So this is going to push this way, and it's going to stretch the lower back on the opposite side. Same thing on this. Inhale, lengthen up, and then exhale. A lot of times we stretch like this, you're going to find your limit pretty quickly. So you might not be able to go much deeper back. Just focus on doing it even if you can't go any further back, deepening on the exhale every time. Okay, we'll switch sides. Some people like to do this. You guys can do it and I'll just talk while you're doing it. Some people like to do this stretch, bring the leg to the other side. If you want to do that, that's fine. It's going to put more stretch on this, but less on your back. Because the further your leg is this way, the more your back has to reach around to get to it, so it's going to stretch it more. Whereas if it's here, it's closer to your part of your back that's stretching. So it's just a matter of preference. I like to get a good stretch in the low back, so I like to keep it this way. But some people feel really tight on the outside, the piriformis area, so they bring it over this way. It's really just a matter of, you can try both and see what works best for you, or do a little bit of both. Okay. So we're going to do another one down here, and then we're going to move to a little bit more of the upper body. This one's going to get more the outside of the leg as well, and it's also going to get your hip flexor a little bit less than the other one. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to bring our leg so it's about perpendicular to our body, and then the other one will be straight back. If you're really flexible, you can turn to the side, like that, as you're going. Or you can come up and get more of a hip flexor stretch if you want that way. For a lot of these stretches, there's multiple ways of doing it. It's just a good idea for the ones that you can to move around a little bit with each breath. And find your tight spots and focus on them. Okay, we'll switch sides. The higher you can bring your lower leg up toward like your chest area, the more it's going to stretch that outside area of the hip. It's okay to have it down low like that if you need to, but it's not significantly as much of a stretch as if it's up higher. In some ways is very similar to that lunge stretch we were doing, but just adding in a hip rotator stretch on this side as well. Okay, so I'm going to talk about one other major area of the body at this point. So we talked about the knee being bent, we talked about the hip being bent. Not necessarily happening all the time, but very common is that we slouch forward and usually project our neck forward, sitting, watching a computer screen, something along those lines. So this would be like proper posture, this would be a protracted shoulder girdle. So what we want to do is when we're sitting, we don't want to have to focus on this and think about like, it's actually possible to focus too much on your posture where you're not really able to get deep into your practice. So we want to do some stretches when we're not sitting so that we can be in this position more naturally So we're not having to think about it when we're in the middle of our meditation. So one area is going to be a lat stretch, the latissimus muscle on the back. It comes up through here, and it actually comes up and attaches onto the inner part of the arm. So even though it's a back muscle, when it's tight, it rotates your shoulders forward a little bit because the muscle pulls back that way. Okay. So when you guys are probably going to need to use chairs for this one. So what we'll do is we'll just come over and we'll have our arms straight on and just feel that stretch on the outside. The same thing with this, you might have to move a little bit, move the angle a little bit, just to see how it feels. Turn out, turn in, see what's tight and what's not, and just focus on the tight areas. With this one, you're not going to move from your belly button, from your center as much. You're going to be more focused on the area around the armpit and moving lower from there. This particular stretch. But you still want to think of elongating at the armpit when you're inhaling and then going deeper into it on the exhale. Okay, let's switch sides. Okay, so now the last one we're going to do is also for that protracted shoulder girdle. You guys can stay at the chairs because we're going to use them. So this one is for the chest muscle, this pectoralis major. It comes over from over here, over onto the arm as well. So when it gets tight, it tightens and brings the arm in, like that. So on this one, what we're going to do now, instead of like facing the chair square on, we'll sort of be perpendicular to it. And what we'll do is if you have your arm up in a 90 degree, like 90 degrees here, 90 degrees there, you're going to go slightly higher than 90. And that's where you're going. You can do this against a wall. So if I just use this, if I were to just come up here, you guys can do it against those walls back there if you'd like, or against the chair. So when you do this, you'll just step forward. Try to keep your body square forward and not leaning this way because it's going to take away from the stretch. So try to turn away from your arm as you do it, maybe a little bit lower than that. And you guys will want to have something that, you want to be on a corner, so you can't do it on a flat wall. You want to be on a corner where the wall is here and you're pushing your body away from it, but the wall is stopping your arm from moving. Okay? Turn toward me. Yeah. You see how that stretches it more? You guys can stay there. If you prefer to do it on a chair, which is just as effective, you'll be on the ground. You'll have your arms so 90 degrees, go slightly higher. Have your arm on the edge of the chair, and then you'll just go down and turn, sort of like feel a tight, the stretching on the outer part of your armpit. Either one is fine. Okay, let's switch sides. You like that one, huh? The upper body is a very neglected area in terms of stretching. A lot of people focus on the lower body, but there's a lot of deviations that can occur from prolonged sitting with the shoulders and with the neck that do need to be addressed in order for everything else really to be working effectively as well. When our shoulders are pulled forward and our neck is projected out, it can change our center of gravity, and then we counterbalance with our low back. You can actually cause low back problems from your upper body being too far forward in that way. And it's sort of a vicious cycle with that. Everything sort of affects everything else in the kinetic chain. All right, so we're all done. Do you guys want to do some question and answer or about any of these? Does anyone have any questions about what we did or about any other stretches that you're...
That last stretch, were we supposed to feel it here or more back here?
More in the front.
Okay.
Yeah. Were you feeling it back there?
Well, I mean, I felt it here, but also as I leaned in more, I felt it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's possible because that could be the top of your lat.
Yeah.
Potentially.
What about the quads? For Cesar, I know a lot of people have a hard time sitting Cesar.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a special stretch you use for that? Is it like this?
Yeah, we could do a quad stretch, just a basic.
That's just that one.
Yeah, that one. I mean, this one here is going to get that a lot as well. A lot of times it's just, a lot of them, these stretches weren't meant for getting us deeper into our postures. They're meant to counterbalance our postures. So if we sit Seiza a lot, we want to do the opposite. By sitting Seiza, you're going to get more flexible in the muscles that lengthen during Seiza. So if you're sitting regularly in Seiza, you're eventually going to go from sitting up here to down there, to down there, to down there, just from being in that position a lot. Your body is going to get more and more comfortable with the areas that are lengthened, basically down here. They're also going to get more comfortable with the areas that are shortened, like right here, and like the back of the knee. So that's why we want to stretch those areas that are tight, because as we get lower, it's going to create more tightness in those specific areas. But yeah, there's stretches that we can do to get us deeper into those, and the quad stretch is definitely one of them, for sure. Any other questions?
On the neck.
So with the neck, here's the thing. Okay, so with a protracted shoulder, or with a neck, a protruding neck, we usually think of like that the muscles in the back are becoming lengthened because you see it coming out. But actually, what's happening is they're becoming shortened. The muscles in the back of the occipital, so that would be lengthened, but that's shortened back here. So what we need to do is we need to lengthen these muscles. One thing that we can do, which would be a little tough to do in here, is we could get like a foam roll, and this is a little different. This isn't like the typical stretch you would do, like where you're doing your inhales and exhales. You could have a foam roll, make sure that this area is lengthened when you put it on, and actually lay there for literally about 5 minutes is a good way to. That's a quick way to help your neck to go from here to back like that, because it's all about lengthening this area. I wasn't going to get, when we don't have foam rolls, I wasn't going to have everyone lay down for 5 minutes to do that, but it's a good question. It's something that definitely should be addressed. So it's really about lengthening the muscles in the back of the occipital region so that your neck can naturally start to come back that way. It'll happen naturally. You don't have to think about like being a turtle, like sinking back into your shell. Just lengthen those muscles. So you could do that with a foam roll. You want to do it with something that's somewhat firm. In fact, any stretches that you do, you want to do with firmness. Like if you're doing a hamstring stretch, and let's say you can't reach your toes, you'd want to use a towel rather than like a rubber band, like you know those big bands? Some people stretch with them. That's not a good idea. When you're working the flexibility, you're working the elasticity of your body. The more elastic tools you use, the less elasticity you're going to work in your own body. So if this is elastic and I can move back and forth, it's not going to get me as much as a firm towel. Then I can gauge my own elasticity. You guys see what I'm saying? If it's like this, I can't gauge that as much because there's too much give. So if we're working the rubber bands in our body, no rubber band tools. We want to use firm tools.
Back on the neck issue,
Sure.
I've heard people say that it's not good to sleep with a big pillow because it puts your head in the back. Is that, do you know from your experience how you sleep? Does that
Yeah.
play?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Tempur-Pedic pillows aren't good. Anything where it's going to increase, where the bulge is too big behind you. Typically, like a towel. I actually sleep oftentimes without a pillow. I'll start myself laying flat without a pillow. I've actually been told that that's not healthy either, but I go with based on. I always take whatever guidance I get, including this. Like, don't take what I'm saying as being law, the rule. Take what I'm giving you and use what's useful for you and just discard whatever's not. I've been told that it's good to take a towel and roll it to like 3/4 and have that underneath so it starts to get that natural formation under the neck. The challenge is that when you go onto your side, you're not going to use a towel. So I oftentimes actually lay flat, just like this, and I make sure that this is loose. I like to sleep on my back. I'll sometimes fall asleep this way, but then I have a pillow next to me so that when I go to my side, then I go onto the pillow in that way. Does that answer? I don't even remember what the original question
Yeah,
was.
that was just, I know when I was in Japan, that they had those little pillows, they're about this big,
Yeah.
and they're like rice bowl or something. They're really hard, and they just kind of stick under your neck.
And is it narrow in the middle?
Yeah.
And then bigger on the outside?
Yeah, they're just small. They're not very big at all. And they
There's-
kind of conform, but it takes a while to get used to because at first you think, God, these are hard, but after a while it seems like they're more comfortable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know these big pillows that you buy at Target or whatever.
Yeah, big pillows aren't healthy in most cases. Any other questions? All right. Thanks, guys.